REDefined, the story of Red. Story created by Dr. Kimberly Morgan. The world tried to write my story, but I picked up the pen and wrote my own. The day was over. The classroom was quiet. Red pen nestled back into the crowded cup. Red had done her job, leaving circles, check marks, and tiny corrections in the margins. But as soon as the room grew still, Red stared up at the ceiling and sighed. She didn't want to just fix papers. She wanted to be a part of them. The day was filled with red X's, check marks, and proofreading marks. Red pen knew the routine by heart. She could draw them with her eyes closed. It was always corrections, never celebrations. Always marks and redos, never encouraging word. As the classroom lights dimmed and the moonlight poured through the blinds, Red pen sighed and let her mind wander. What if she could draw rockets that launched off the corners of the notebook pages? What if she wrote stories, not suggestions? What if she could sketch silly faces, decorate the margins with hearts, or write "wow" and giant swirls across the top of the paper? The next day was no different. Check marks, circles, and redos. She watched the other pens leave behind something more. "Well done" in purple. "Amazing" in teal. Students often left notes and handmade cards behind, thoughtful, bright, vibrant, and full of life. But Red noticed one thing. She was never part of the picture. What she wouldn't give to even be a reminder. She wanted to be more, to be a message, to matter. After the students left for the day, Red found herself dreaming once again of what she could become. She imagined herself writing thrilling tales and sketching every page with purpose and personality. A detective who was hot on the case of missing donuts. A brave superhero pen soaring through the skies with his sidekick. And a series of silly bunny jokes and adventures. Yes! Red again! My favorite color! I don't know why the teacher always calls my parents when I get on Red. Red listened from the other side of the room. His voice echoed across the room, full of joy and then hesitation. That shift hit Red harder than any correction ever had. Red realized she wasn't the problem. It was the story that had been written about the color red. Perhaps it wasn't red that needed to change. Maybe it was the meaning people had given the color red that needed to be changed. Red began to understand. She wasn't what others believed she was. She was who she believed she could be. Red thought quietly in the empty room. If people had misunderstood her story, who else had they misunderstood? Her eyes wandered across the room, and then she saw it. A stop sign, hanging from a hook. Not a warning to fear, but a symbol to keep us safe. As curiosity took over, Red began scanning her surroundings. Suddenly, Red didn't feel so misunderstood. It was in the fire alarm, ready to warn. In the first aid kit, ready to help. Maybe Red wasn't just for pointing out what's wrong. Maybe Red showed up when people needed support the most. Red stared at the bookshelf lined with stories about emotions. Red, always red, used to mean anger. She used to agree. She used to feel it boiling inside any time she thought about it. But today, it felt different. Anger wasn't bad. Anger was powerful. Anger itself wasn't the problem. It was what came after anger, the choices, the reactions. And sometimes those big feelings led to big changes. Sometimes anger lit the fire that made incredible things happen. The thought of the stop sign as a symbol of protection made Red reflect on the marks she left behind. Encouraging words felt wonderful to write, but they didn't always lead to growth. Growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from redoing, rethinking, and striving for higher goals. Red finally understood. She wasn't the end of the sentence. She was the start of something better. Tucked behind the other papers, Red discovered a few drawings, bright, imaginative, and strangely familiar. They were just like the stories she would dream about creating. The boy who once landed on Red had brought so many beautiful ideas to life. As she traced each joyful line with admiration, she noticed another page stuck to the back. It seemed to be glued by a glossy smear of syrup, likely from a lunchbox mishap. With great care, she began to separate the two, doing everything she could to preserve the precious doodles. It felt symbolic in some way, uncovering something new beneath what others might have discarded. A wave of emotion washed over Red. She had spent so much time focusing on what she wasn't, what she couldn't do, that she never stopped to see the impact she was making. All this time, she believed she was just a mark of mistakes, a symbol of being wrong. But here was proof, scribbled in syrup, sticky ink, and joyful lines, that someone saw her as something more. For the first time, she didn't feel small next to the other tools. She didn't envy the other colors or the different marks they could leave. She didn't wish to trade in her lines for loops or glitter. Instead, she whispered, "I'm Red. I leave marks and I make change." She wasn't quite done yet. There were still two important messages she needed to send. Dear teacher, I once believed I was only meant to correct. But a little dreamer reminded me, red isn't the color of error, it's the color of possibility. Let's reimagine our chart, not as a place to label mistakes, but as a canvas to celebrate growth. Let's give them a place to pause, to wonder, to reflect. They don't need a chart to display what went wrong. They need a place to remember what went right. Signed, Red. Dear little dreamer, thank you for seeing me. You reminded me that being bold isn't bad, it's brave. Continue coloring the world with kindness and imagination. The world needs your color, your spark, and your stories. Red. Red hovered near the new display, filled with joy. This wasn't a chart, it was a spot for second chances, a place where every child's story had room to grow. Mistakes, triumphs, quiet wins, all were welcomed here. Red found many of the little dreamers' drawings scattered around the classroom that year, tucked in books, taped to desks, even folded into paper airplanes left behind. Each one whispered the same message: you matter, you belong. As the school years passed, she heard stories about that boy, the one who used to live on the lowest cliff, whose light had once been dimmed by misunderstanding. He didn't let the label stick. He grew, he believed, he became, and one day, he returned to that classroom, not as a student, but as a teacher. One who made sure every child felt seen, whose charts reflected strengths, and whose room always had a place for reflection and growth. Many dreamers came and went, but none touched Red's heart quite like that one. You are the author of your own story. Don't let anyone else write it for you. Be bold, be kind, be you.